back to Block TV, and it's time for Cryptonomics. Today, TON, the elusive Telegram open network that is charging ahead with very little press, telling investors it is planning to send its coin, the Gram, known as the Gram, within the next 2 months. Now, today, supposedly, as quiet as things are done at TON, a report from a Russian website stated that the Telegram open network will be testing, as of today, with the beginning of the first week of September. More on that and what exactly they're testing, what exactly we know. And for that, I'm joined by Asher Westrop-Evans, senior Block TV correspondent. Yes, what exactly is happening?
Okay, so a lot of developments have come out, yeah, although as you stated, we're not getting full public statements here, we're getting reports, we're getting hearsay. A lot of it coming, of course, from TON Labs, which was a startup set up by early investors in TON in order to help facilitate development tools on the Telegram open network. So what we're getting out of there is reports stating that, yes, they will be setting up a testnet as of September 1st to release access and description for how people can set up a testnet node, run effectively a node on their testnet, see how the system works, and see how it functions, which, if so, would be a very big step and one of the first sort of publicly facing steps that you would see coming out of coming out of Telegram rather, in regards to the whole setup of the Telegram open network. Remembering, we've had effectively no public statements from Telegram
You cannot
themselves.
stress this even more. I mean, there is, clearly they have a spokesperson, but there seems to be, you know, the method there is as little press as possible.
Certainly. Yeah. So other than almost all the information we know from investors who bought in, about the $1.7 billion raised, about the fact that it was originally supposed to launch last December, but now is set for October 31st, a deadline which is a hard deadline. They are contractually required to launch by that date, and it seems, at least anecdotally, that we're hearing that they are on track to do that.
Explain contractually, just for those who are not in the crypto sphere, they sold already.
Exactly. They sold their tokens, they did this big token sale, and they have a deadline through which they are contractually obliged to release it, which puts them in a very different set, unlike Libra, unlike Venus, unlike any of these other large-scale projects that we've been hearing about in social networking or company-backed projects that are taking off at the moment.
Because hearings on the Senate.
Exactly, because these guys have a deadline, and more importantly, regarding that sort of regulatory element, Durov is not a big fan of the regulators, and he's going to go ahead with this whether regulated or not.
That's the million-dollar question. That man behind Telegram, Pavel Durov, formerly of VKontakte,
exactly.
And he clearly is not putting any information out there, but charging ahead, right?
Yes, certainly. Another key bit of information we've learned, again coming from this TON Labs, is we've heard that dApps developed for the Ethereum network will be directly transferable to the TON network. A pretty impressive and ballsy move, if I will say so myself. They're saying that they're developing a programming language that allow dApps to move directly over, so clearly they're trying to take that bit of the market, something Ethereum users may be concerned about. Interesting to see.
You know, it's a good question to follow up throughout the next couple of weeks. Yes.
Certainly. I mean, it's a very fascinating one. But again, I mean, I guess we've got to come back to that regulatory question, whether regulators are going to be willing to accept this, because the fact of the matter is that Telegram as a whole is a company with a reputation for being used for privacy, but also in regulators' eyes to subvert regulations, get around all sorts of regulatory issues, including, of course, we can see it in the protests in Hong Kong at the moment, where they've been used primarily Telegram, and generally with terror financing. And something that we spoke with the Deputy Director of Memory, an organization very dedicated to finding out information around this. We spoke to him a few days ago, and we can have a little piece of his interview to talk about Telegram's role. Let's take a listen.
While the American social media companies, including Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, come under fire on Capitol Hill quite often, and sometimes deservedly so, although we do note tremendous efforts being taken by some of those companies, and really Facebook more than the rest of them in our experience. Telegram both is not a part of the general conversation on Capitol Hill and among Western officials, while unfortunately it is the main arena for terrorist communications these days. So when you combine that, the fact that Telegram seems to be a very welcoming ground for terrorists, does not seem inclined and totally resistant to clamping down on any type of content that takes place on its platform, with the fact that cryptocurrency is a growing trend in terrorist fundraising, and you combine the two, so with so many terrorists already using Telegram, the ability to transfer money freely and with minimal oversight, either from within the company or outside it is a very, very scary trend, and one that the US and the West has to get out in front of.
Now that narrative we've been hearing about Telegram being a fruitful ground for terrorists, we've heard that from mainstream media since its inception. Pavel Durov, the man behind Telegram, was confronted with that question in one of his last interviews. He made a round of interviews in 2016. Let's have a listen what he said to that.
Now, in the early days, there was concern that, in particular, Islamic terrorists might be using Telegram for secret communications. What's your attitude to that? What have you done about it?
99.9% of our users basically like Telegram because they can communicate with their families and friends and colleagues for completely legitimate reasons that would use the app. So there's this small fraction of a fraction of a fraction which misuses the technology and can plot some illegal activity. And we don't like that. We're troubled by it, and we will take measures that we can take to stop them from, for example, stop ISIS from, for example, using Telegram public channels, public broadcasts that they can set up to spread their propaganda.
As you spread, it becomes more expensive to run. At some stage, you're going to run out of money unless you find a business model. How soon do you have to find a business model?
Exactly. So I think it's completely responsible for us to come up with a sustainable business model within 2 years from now, or approximately that kind of time frame.
Pavel Durov, I think you and I can agree that he's raising a regular point. You said to me off camera, if I'm using a cell phone, an Apple phone, or, any kind of phone to do illicit things, is that company responsible?
Exactly. Is it a platform? Is it a publisher? Do they have editorial control over the content, or are they simply the platform? If I call a caller hit in on a phone line, is the phone company responsible, or am I? That is the classic question.
It's a classic fundamental question on that. Now, over the course of the last 24 hours, Telegram has also been accused of leaking identities through a bug in their system. They've been very prolific. You covered it in Hong Kong in getting the message out to the protesters to get out. And they've done something according to Reuters, they've changed their mind to allow users to cloak their telephone numbers, safeguard protesters against monitoring by authorities, which is a wonderful one, can say if you're supporting those protesters, but it's also...
so this is the flip side of the whole situation. If you're a pro-democracy activist in regards to Hong Kong, there are many, and in the West, many would say that that's a very good thing. So
he's protecting them from China.
Exactly, protecting them from the Chinese government, from Chinese control, potentially in this particular instance. So it becomes such a complex beast when you're talking about that. And it's an interesting question. With them closing this bug, with them allowing users to keep their identities cloaked, you got to ask, is that the platform or is that the publisher taking on? Are they being true to their principles as a platform and saying that users on their platform have the right to privacy, or by taking this active step, which seems to contravene the interests of the Chinese government, are they serving as a publisher? And do they have the right to simply
do they have the right to do that? And the fact that, they've done that supposedly for the Hong Kong protesters, but it's a feature now available, that cloaking, to the nearly 250 million users of Telegram. So it will be made to use in different ways by other people.
Exactly, and it could be used for nefarious ways, but as we've said, and many in the crypto sphere will say, cash has been used in nefarious ways around the world. But this gets to the real question here. It's one thing when we're talking about passing information. When you're talking about transferring wealth anonymously, as the Telegram Open Network potentially will allow, that's a whole different ballgame, Yael. That's when people can really take control of their financing, their information, package it all through the Telegram network and use this in ways that perhaps weren't conceivable before. And it's going to be interesting to see if governments around the world are firstly willing to let that happen, and then even if they're not willing, if they can actually stop it.
If they can actually stop it.
They haven't been able to stop Telegram so far. Are they going to be able to take the steps to actually stop it?
That'll be the million-dollar question by the end of October, which, as you rightfully mentioned, testing began today on TON. That's the Telegram Open Network, and by October 31st. Let's see if this thing is happening.
Something will happen.
Something will happen. Asha Westrup-Evans, BLOCKTV, Cryptonomics. We'll be right back.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.